Welcome, everyone. This is our leadership series, and I am excited to be here and talk about with all of these wonderful women that lead in so many diverse ways. I'm so excited to talk about being present. I believe strongly that, as I'm sure all of us do, that you really need to be present when you're present. It is so important to be able to actively listen and really pay attention to the people that you're around. We have never had more distractions, and with COVID, it has really had an enormous impact on people. I think I mentioned this on another call, but it's bears saying again. Over this past year, we've actually ended up with a minister for loneliness for the country of Japan, a minister of loneliness for Britain, because we've actually ended up with more suicide than we've actually had people pass away from COVID. And it is because people have gotten so caught up in their devices that they're not present when they're present. The best thing for your mental health is being present and trying to be in the present tense as much as humanly possible. But the best thing for your business health and your leadership health is also being present. When you can be present, and the key is having a presence even when you're not present. When somebody really remembers and it resonates with them that you were completely there for them, that you were completely in the moment, that you were really truly there. People are looking for that kind of leader. They want to matter and they want to belong. So I thought I'd start off with a couple of suggestions on what it is that I do to stay present and stay in the present moment. Obviously, we're only doing it for as much as we all can, but here's one of the things that I think for an impact on, regardless of who you are that are listening. When I'm in the past, I'm living with stress. I have unfinished business. And so my whole entire body chemistry is in stress. And I'm only thinking about things that are in the past. And that's probably because I didn't accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. I didn't finish. I have unfinished business. I put myself under this level of pressure cooker, or I even have some personal issues that might have held on to the past. When I'm living in the future, I'll be happy when, I'll have something when, I'm living with anxiety. I'm catastrophizing about where the future is going to be. And we've all been in the unknown before, and we're still here. So, but when we're in the present tense and we're really with people, when you remember those moments that you really connected with somebody, that you really felt like they felt your presence, that you really felt like you mattered at that moment. When you're in the present, you're actually in control. That's when you are in the most control of your life and the most control of your destiny. You cannot have any power unless you are in the now. And so it's incredibly important for people that have chosen to lead to be present. For me, a couple of things that I do that really help, because we all lead busy lives and we all have pretty high responsibility jobs. What I do is I make sure that I start my day the same. We actually did it as an organization. Susan Harrison, who's a senior vice president with our organization, started Exits Miracle Morning. So we actually have a Facebook page for it for everybody to be able to connect and stay on track with. So we practice silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. So we're in control of our day before our day starts. And usually we all get up really early in order to do that. And it really does make a huge difference. But I always visualize and take 120 seconds before I get anywhere. I'm going to be in front of an important meeting. We're looking to hire somebody. You're going to speak on the stage. And I close my eyes and picture how I want everybody to feel. Because people will remember much more about how you made them feel than even necessarily the words that you said. And 120 seconds can put you in that right headspace and get you to be present. For me, it started with martial arts, that I started visualizing how I wanted the fight to go or how I wanted the test to go. But it really does make a huge difference. If I ever feel like I'm off, just taking deep breaths and putting myself back into the moment makes a big difference, or literally going back to that 120 seconds. At the end of my day, so that I'm not taking that stress home or wherever else I'm going to go, I take 120 seconds and ask myself what worked today. Then I can put work aside. And tomorrow when I come back, I'll be with something that worked, and I can go and be present where I need to be present. If before I go to bed at night, I always ask myself effective questions, and I keep a pad of paper and a pen beside the bed. Your subconscious will do the work at night if you're worried about anybody, if you have any concerns. But I write down, if I didn't make a phone call, if I didn't accomplish something, if I didn't finish something, I write it down, because then I put it aside for the night so that I can sleep. And actually, if I'm functioning better, I'm going to have the ability to be more present as well. So, that's my advice to the group. Kelly, how about if you start us off with how you stay present?
Sure. It's interesting. You said a lot of great points. You made a lot of great points there, Tami. I always think the hard part for me is the living in the future. My mind is what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? It can run 1,000 scenarios. And so the need to be present is so important to me. And I always, when I was dealing with individuals, what I always remembered was an old saying, I don't care what you know till I know that you care.
Right.
And I can't show you I care unless I'm present with you when you and I are talking. So my thing that I always tried to do was really look people in the eye. Even if they're talking about something you could care less about, if you look them in the eye, you kind of get interested because they're interested, right? And it breeds an interest in you. And you really do stay present. When your eyes start floating around, or you're not watching, you're not focused, I think it's very, very easy to not be present. So I always tried to really focus on the individual, and that helped me a lot, especially in tough employee discussions, especially when, there were things I literally didn't understand what this person was talking about or trying to tell me. The more I stayed focused, the better it was. So those are some things I kind of did.
I love it. I absolutely love it. There's a great book. It's called Humans Are Underrated. And they did a study of 12-year-old kids, and they had them, they took away their tablets, they took away their devices, everything, gaming, television, everything, for 2 weeks, and sent them to camp. And the reason they did it is because 100% of those 12-year-old kids failed the empathy test. They could not read another human being.
Wow.
And then they sent them to camp for 2 weeks and away from all of their devices. And they came back, and 100% of them passed the empathy test. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's really the most important thing. We can let this take control of our lives, or we can use technology as a tool, which is what it was put here for. And you know how much more valued somebody feels when they feel like you were really present. I love that, Kelly. I think it just speaks volumes. So, Teresa.
Thank you so much. And first of all, I want to wish everybody a happy 4th of July, because we are celebrating in the next couple of days. And, I love what you both said. And one thing that comes to mind for me is, when you experience a loss. So, for example, when I was 18 years old, my mother and I traveled to Venezuela to visit a family member. And while I was in Venezuela, my mother started to get sick. Now, my mother suffered from heart problems the entire time that I was growing up. So we were in and out of hospitals. That was my life. I lived in hospitals because I was her caretaker. I was the person that drove her to different appointments, and I was the only one that could drive for the family. But I remember that summer more than anything because it was the first time that I was actually present. She and I took this trip together. We went to visit family. And, it was away from my other sisters, away from responsibilities, and away from my boyfriend at the time. Mike and I were dating. And at the time, I was so upset that, I couldn't be with him. But at the same time, I was so grateful that I was with my mother because it was the last time that I was ever with her. When we came back, my mother was placed in the hospital, and I was off to college because it was a break. It was during our Christmas break. And at that time, I came back only to find that she had gone into a coma. And from that, she never recovered. And so being present to me is significant in that I always try to be present. And I always encourage all of you, as we've come out of COVID, we've seen things happen, right? That you have to be present in the moment, and you have to remember those beautiful times, because that's what takes you on to the events of your life today, right? There was also a study done recently, this was about 5 years ago, about a gentleman that walked into a Starbucks and he had a $100 bill on him. And he had a sign that said, for anyone that comes to me to get this $100 bill, it's yours. And asked me for this $100 bill. And he walked in, stood around. Nobody looked up from their iPad or their computer or their cell phone. And no one got the $100 bill. And so for me, that was huge. And the fact that we are not present. We are not present in the moment. We're not present in what we're, even when we travel, we're not looking and engaging and checking things out. So presence is huge, significant, because you never know what is going to happen that's going to be a huge impact for you, that's going to make the biggest difference in your life and someone else's as well. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to share that personal story.
I love it. And I think the more personal you make it, the more you can remember, right? Our brain connects when we're really passionate. We can stay self-disciplined and we can stay focused. And we really have to have that passion. And obviously you're passionate about that story. And what a gift that you got to have that time and you chose to really, really be present. That's just amazing. And so you're going to make all the rest of us cry now. So that's good. It's a beautiful story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Erica. Here's my red, white, and blue. Thank you very much for your service, by the way.
And you too, military mom. So I think presence is something that we talked a lot about, but very few people can actually reflect and say, you know, I was truly there. I was truly present for that moment. And when you have those moments, you should sort of take it in and learn from that so you can try to duplicate this later on. There was a gentleman who wrote a book, and I cannot remember the name of it, but he studied hundreds of thousands of obituaries across the world. And what he found is that within those one paragraph obituaries, it wasn't about the money you made or your job, these types of professional achievements. It was, how did you touch somebody individually? You know, it's those personal interactions and those personal stories that really make your legacy live. And that goes back to what, you know, the other women were saying, is just looking people in the eyes, being empathetic, caring about somebody other than yourself. And, you know, to share a little bit of a personal story for me, I can look back in a moment where I really, truly can say I was present. And we get so busy in our lives and it's hard to just stop, reflect, and take it all in. But I had got out of active duty 11 years, you know, during the height of the war. And anybody who, you know, serves, you really need to kind of take a breath after whatever it is that you went through. So I decided to go to India. And there was a day I was by myself, very uncomfortable. You know, you have to be on your wits, which is part of being present. No distractions. You know, I ended up going to a place called Darjeeling, taking a little toy train through the Himalayas. And I was about my 5th day visiting Tibetan refugee camps, and I decided to go to the highest zoo in the world. So I was taking a beautiful hike and I got some street food, some Indian food, and I sat on this bench, I pulled out my food, and there was this beautiful smell, and then there were some children at the zoo playing music, and the clouds parted, and there's Mount Everest. And it was one of those moments that I was like, it just, this feeling just comes across you like, wow, the sights, the smells, the emotion, all of that, being present, no distractions. That was very healing for me. And I think we all need those kinds of moments, those healing moments, and to think about, you know, how they say the present is a gift. It's called a present. So don't always look behind and regret your choice.
Did we just go quiet?
Yeah, I think we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was such a great thing to say. You know, the being present, it really does engage all of your senses, right? When you're really totally there, you remember the smells, that smell, that what, it doesn't matter whether your grandmother smelled like lavender or lilac or whatever it was. And, you know, those special moments. I try and remember to tell people now that are in the process of getting married, or somebody's graduating, or somebody's doing something really special that they, this amazing accomplishment, that stop and freeze frame where you are. Try and stop and literally freeze frame and capture as much of this moment as you possibly can to put it into your memory, because we don't do it deliberately. And sometimes we get so busy and so caught up that all of a sudden it's over. I talk to so many people that don't remember anything about their wedding except for how busy it was and how tired they were when it was over.
You know,
Instead
Tami,
of, yeah.
can I interject too? A classic case is a mom of little kids, right? I mean, they're just so busy. And I always tell my daughter, I've got 5 grandchildren, 3 little ones. And I always tell her, just freeze frame, like you just said, freeze frame, because they grow up so fast. And nowhere do you see that you need to be present and spend the time right here, right now with their ages, because they change so fast. Didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry about that, but I had to jump in because it's so true. It's just so true.
Well, and you know, everybody's got a checklist instead of just really being present in whatever this moment. When you go on a vacation and you get that opportunity to spend uninterrupted time with your family, and you can really, let's capture this moment, a sunrise, a sunset. But some of those engaging conversations that you have, they turn out to be the best conversations of your life. They might even shift the trajectory of where you're going to go, or you could miss that moment because you were thinking about something else, or you were looking for the next thing. I've definitely been in front of people, and I'm sure you all have, that they're shaking your hand, but they're looking over you like, who's next?
Yeah.
And you feel like, okay. And it just so important to have us be all here, without a doubt. Chitra?
Yeah, we had such uplifting examples of being present. I want to give a different example. You know, very early in my career, I had a manager with whom, you know, where we had one-on-one meeting every few weeks, every couple of weeks. And when I would show up, it would start like, you know, and soon the manager would shut his eyes. He was not physically present. Mentally, he was in snooze land. Just he had a huge, he had a big family, probably frazzled, and now he's getting this finally one-on-one time, and where he can sit down. Maybe I decided it must be my lilting Indian accent that puts him right into over edge to the other side of you know, dreamland. But what I took away is that you know, being present, what I felt, because I could have said anything. Okay, so you're signing up for my brave race for another. So being present, you know, being on the other side of not, you know, receiving the not being present, how it's really, I think, truly one of the important leadership principles being there. It's not just physical presence, it's also you're sharing. I call it, it's sharing the mental state, mental space. Now at this moment, I am sharing, we have a shared mental space during this session, and that is so much more important than anything else. I also found that if you're present, because I have analyzed the times when I have not been present, my son often busts me out. I'll be thinking something, I'll get called on that, right? So 3 things happen when I'm really present is, one is heightened sense of awareness, where the other person's physical space and mental space is, and therefore I'm tuned into them. Secondly, I'm able to react and adapt to what they are saying. If I'm not there, I am not saying the things that ought to have, that would have made that conversation so much more valuable to both of us. That wasn't happening. And thirdly, it's the focus and the concentration, right? It's, I'm giving the time, or he is giving the time, whoever is with me. And it's not just the time that's being shared, it's also your sharing that purpose. It's having that purposeful conversation. So now you're, so absolutely, I'm with, you know, amazing examples. So I do get called on because I'm a researcher by my occupation. So I've told in my story in one of the other sessions how I can just go deep into something, and 4 hours, 5 hours, I would not know what happened in my life around that. So I do get called on that. But when I'm with people, I try to, some of the devices, tool, techniques that you know, you guys talked about, I decided, okay, I have to be moving away all the things that would distract me, no phone, nothing. So you got to have the physical space clean and ready for the person, so that you're not looking at this, my paper, my phone here. And so it's a very purposeful, I think being present leads to more purposeful, intentional conversations.
They say that happiness, and it's a study all the way back to 1939 or 1938, Harvard did a study on people and happiness. And happiness had nothing to do with money. It had nothing to do with position. It had everything to do with relationships. And you cannot have a really good relationship unless you are in the moment, unless you're really present. You're not going to have a full relationship. It's not going to be the same. I remember I bake a lot with my granddaughter, and we used to bake every Saturday, and we definitely bake when we can. And every winter we bake holiday cookies and bring them to the neighbors. I live in a old New England town with a lot of farms around. So there are a lot of neighbors that are older. And so I take her with me in the truck, and we bake all of these different pastries for everybody and different cookies and bring them from house to house. And I remember being so overbooked and having so many things going on that we were literally going from house to house, and I'm trying to make it a learning moment for her. And I'm like, and Esme, this is why we want to really spend the time. We got to make sure these people are okay. And if we check in now and we know that they're okay now, then when we see them again, we'll know if something's changed, right? Because some of these people are getting a little bit older. And I'm telling her that this is a great learning moment, and that you're going to learn this. And I'm pulling out of the fifth house, and I'm like literally chewing up the clock, and I'm looking at how much time is going on. And she said, you know what, Graham, you know what you need to learn? Patience. And I'm like, oh, from the mouths of babes, man. You have to really book off that time and be specific about booking off the time. It's probably better to be around fewer people, but really be present. I've definitely talked to a lot of people especially during holiday time, that they are in such a hurry. And then you have this time between Christmas and New Year's, or whatever the holidays are that you celebrate. And then I go back, and I've talked to some of these people, and they're like, yep, that's off the checklist. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what kind of an experience was that then? That it's off the checklist instead of we had this moment, we had this magic, Tasha, what about you?
I was just reflecting on so much of what you guys have said. It's funny. So I have 3 young kids, and obviously a full-time job. And something that a friend said to me really, when my oldest was 5 years old, and it was such great advice. Well, first of all, like we all know as moms and parents, that the days are long, but the years are short, right? So it's like, kind of feel like you're just barely making it through that day. But then I look back, I'm like, what happened? My kids now, my oldest is 15, my middle is 13, and my youngest is 8. Sorry, I thought I lost you. So it's interesting when we talk about like focus and giving people your full attention. There's really nothing more important. So the advice my friend said was, when your kids come home and when you're talking to them, greet them like they are the most important people in the world, right? Give them your undivided attention. And if you do that, you really can't mess up as a parent. So I really try to do that. And earlier on in my career, where I felt like I was juggling so many different demands on my time, I noticed myself, messaging back while my son's telling me a story, my daughter's telling me a story. And there's nothing actually more stressful than that. You know what I mean? Because you're not serving the need of your child or your partner or whoever it is you're talking to. And you're probably not doing that other thing that you're trying to do super well, right? And so what I realized is, and I thought that like by doing that, I'd be relieving myself of something, a task to do later. But the reality is that there's always more tasks, right? So you never really get to the end of your pile of things to do. And when I focus on the person in front of me, I feel instantly filled up. Like the stress of trying to multitask and think about something else while I'm talking to someone who should be a priority, like that conflict is hard for me to manage mentally. And so I've really started doing something. So with my kids, I make that a huge priority. And I likewise, with my coworkers and people who report to me, same thing. Like giving undivided attention is so critical to our relationships, and something that I've only started to do more recently because I was raised by a British father. And we sort of learn, like, you don't really talk about yourself that, very much. Like, don't make it all about you in conversations. But as I get older, I realize that actually my friends want to hear about me, and my coworkers want to learn more about me. So I've had to really break sort of an insecurity of mine and share stories and share pictures. So now, like, work and personal life is blending. And so in our Slack channels and during our video calls, I'll kind of post a picture of my daughter at camp. And I was like, I was so worried about her going to camp, but look, she seems okay. And the response to, like, sharing personal things deepens relationships in such a meaningful way. And now my coworkers do the same with me. Before, 10 years ago, I probably would never have done that. I don't know why. Like, I wouldn't have had the confidence. I would have felt insecure about sharing personal things. But I've realized that sort of creating that intimacy, giving someone who you trust more information about you, sort of solidifies also that time. So so we have 1,000 employees, and I always worry, like, am I going to remember the names of their kids, or what's going on with them? And the truth is the more I share, the more they share, the more I remember about that interaction, remember them. If we're only talking about data or a task, it's really likely I won't remember very much about that conversation. So I really make it a point to sort of open up about myself. And it's interesting how reciprocal that becomes, So I think sharing personal things helps you be present,
I have to jump in, and I related to you, Tasha, when you said, right, it's stiff upper lip. I grew up in India, being, former British colony. It's not about talking about you, oneself, I. We don't, and you have to break out of that to share that.
Yeah.
People ask me, what's the first thing that struck you in India, in America when you landed? I tell, it's not the buildings, it's not all that, we have read enough about it. I sat in the flight from Chicago. I landed in Chicago. That was my port of entry. And Chicago to Lansing in Michigan, right? And I said, some complete stranger, right? And that stranger is opening up about their life, American, and going through some bad event in their life. And you can imagine, much younger, half my age now I was at that time. This is like, I'm looking at him, starry-eyed. Am I hearing this for real? He doesn't know me, but later on, as I reflected, that stayed with me even through these decades, because later on I came to reflect on that conversation and said, that is about sharing. He was probably making the most of somebody who is sitting next to, making a conversation and making that conversation meaningful. And probably I'm listening, and I did not share much to that conversation, I can tell you. I was just listening quietly. But it stayed with me forever and ever. And it led me to breaking out of that habit of, stiff upper lip. It is okay to share, because sharing opens up the channel of communication with the other person. They feel more comfortable sharing. Anyway, that's my story.
Oh, I agree. I think it's that authenticity, right? It shows some authenticity. You get a little vulnerable, and you're right, Tasha. And Chitra, it creates that bond, and that bond, it's part of being present. When you're present in a conversation, they're starting to form a bond. So otherwise, it's superficial conversation, and we've all had plenty of those. But you know what? If you really want to be present, you have to share a little bit. Yeah, that's a great story, Chitra, too. That's great.
I think too, as leaders, when we're leading companies the way that we are, that we can intimidate people without saying a word. And it's not on purpose. They already have their preconceived notions of who we are. And that, I know I've talked to some people that think that I wake up in a suit, and that, that you get up, 6 hours earlier than everybody else, and you already have more things accomplished than anybody before they even wake up. And, they have these preconceived notions, and they don't realize the things that go on. And then when you share some of your personal life, they realize, oh, they're just like us. Maybe they've had a little more experience up to now, but they're just like us, and they're just going through the motions. They're trying to stay in the lane that they belong in. I remember the first time I shared something personal, and it was because it was so scattered. I was always, matter of fact, I'm in my age range. When I was growing up, women were going to be secretaries, nurses, teachers, or waitresses, or stewardesses. That was it. I never met a female CEO. There weren't people in charge. Even my mom stayed home full time. And they had 6 kids by the time they were 25, you know, the station wagon with the paneling down the side. And that picture of what it is that they were doing. And it was always just, I was competing mostly with men. And so you went in with almost a 3-piece suit and you had to just go and get the job done. And I remember just thinking, I'll just show them I know what I'm doing. And so I started speaking to just show them I knew what I was doing. And the first time that I shared something personal, the response and the difference was just something so memorable, and I'll never forget it. William and Shane were fighting over a snake. My 2 boys were fighting over a snake. And so I had a snake in my hand with a blow dryer in the other hand, trying to dry my hair, getting ready for work. And I had a turtle in the sink. And the turtle in the sink, because Megan wanted me to make friends with the turtle because it was her turtle. She found it outside. She wanted me to make friends with it. So she put it in the sink and said, you can just spend some time with it while you're getting ready. So I have a turtle in the sink, a snake in my hand. I'm trying to dry my hair and I'm thinking how far behind I'm running. And to add to the story, I'm on my way and I've got to drop 3 kids off in 3 different places. And I actually was working for a company that they said, if you miss, I was in sales and I was pretty high up in sales, but they said, if you're late for another meeting, we're going to just lock the door. The guy was very strict and serious as a heart attack. And so I get out to the car and we had crickets for lizards and snakes that the boys had. And I left them on my dashboard, and it's January in New England and they're frozen. And then my brainiac son that's 6 is in the back seat and he said, Mom, don't worry about it. There's a thing that once they'll come back to life once you turn the heat back on. They slow their heart rate down when everything's cold. I'm like, how did you know that? I turn the car on, and as it's warming up, they start popping like popcorn, these crickets that I have in a plastic bag on top of my radiator in the car and on top of the heat. And I freak out and I drive through a red light and I get pulled over. And the cop that pulls me over, I'm telling him the story of the whole story, drying my hair, doing this whole thing, the crickets coming back to life on the thing. And he said, you know what, just get out of here. Just go, do whatever you have to do. So I got away without the ticket. I dropped the kids off. I was 5 minutes late. I stopped and grabbed donuts and I slid a note under the door and said, I have the best story ever to tell. And I went in and told the story, but I had a speaking engagement later that day. And I just decided I'm just going to share what happened today because it was just such a bizarre day. And it was the biggest response ever because always they just thought that I was 100% business, that I only did my job, that I was always in the top because the only thing I ever focused on was work, that I was not even a human being. And then all of a sudden they found out that I was just like everybody else. And it's whatever we portray, right? How we deliver ourselves. So it's just so important for us to be in the present tense and realize that everybody has faults and everybody is trying to get somewhere. And if we're present, we can actually help them to get to where they want to be. And by helping them get to where they want to be, that's probably the best gift we could ever give to them and to ourselves by making a big difference. So Desiree, I know that because you're the woman in charge of all this, we usually have you go last, but I have to say, you've done such an amazing job of making us all feel valued and making this mission that we're on so important, and by the way that you deliver it and how much you put your heart into it. So I'd love to hear your take on presence.
Oh, thank you. You know, you all have expressed so many different things, the emotion that you exude within my body when you started talking in so many different layers has been just overwhelming. I got to be very honest. I mean, you started off, Tami, with the conversation about living in the past, all the things that are going on, and anxiety going to the future. As something I found out about myself as a visionary, I get so excited, get so energized, but then it drains me during the course of the day or course of time because the excitement of the energy. But what can you do about it? You know, you take on the world problems. And it's one of the reasons I shifted so much from just being in the real estate sector into the bigger ecosystem of what we're doing. How do we live in a quality life? So being present, excuse me, for me was really something that came about 8 years ago when my son was diagnosed with acute leukemia, and I went into the hospital. And as we went through the whole thing, I made sure I lived there, I breathed there, I got to know everything about everyone who was there. And it helped me save myself just as much as it did him, because I got to learn about what is fundamentally going in a hospital, what's fundamentally going in wrong with our health system, what's going on in different things, that I got to see that I was there for him, but I was also there for me at the same time. And that's something, being present, I think that we overlook, that we're not realizing that it's so important, that you think that it's all about the content of what we're delivering, what we're showing, how we appear, our facial looks, and how we're putting together, that at the moment we're resetting our mind as much as we're resetting our body. You talked about, you know, karate and being a double degree black belt and what that is, and going for your master's now and all that kind of good stuff. If we reset our mind by saying and having this conversation of storytelling, I was able to look at him and go, wow, I've missed this as your childhood, because I worked so hard to get to a status quo so I could provide for him. I wasn't there for all his games. And when he got out and we went through this process, he said, Mom, you could not have asked for a better person in this world to take care of me, to be there, to help me through this. But when it mattered most for you to be there during my soccer games, for, you know, different programs, you were not there. And I now have to live for that guilt for the rest of my life. So all of us on this are mothers. And the most important thing, I had a really important meeting yesterday, and the gentleman's 37 years old, has multiple kids. I said, the greatest gift I can give to you right now is that working 22 hours a day is not healthy. You got to take that moment, and you got to take that breath to say. So when I say be present, the present is about, if you have children, if you have furry animals, and the furry animals was what made me go, they calm my mind. They make me live there. Their beauty, their heart, they're just living next to me. And that is the moment that we live in. The old saying, smell the roses. Take a moment and smell those roses. And yes, my yard has got more pomeliers and more different kinds of roses than you can ever dream of. I mean, I'm bigger than Roger Gardens and Home Depot than my entire around. But that moment to me is that, and I love Tasha's story when she was talking about how she's sharing, the fact that she's sharing a picture. Why? We are always told, check your life, check your home life, check your personal life at the door. Don't bring it into the office. And now we're saying, what if everyone's saying, oh, we're going to show the picture on there. We're going to talk to, you know, we're going to share what our personal lives are going on here. This is what we're doing, saying personalize it. So to me, that is the most caring thing we can do for humanity, is take technology as a tool, but never lose that storytelling that we have together. And this is exactly what we're doing, from all different industries, from all different perspectives, from all different journeys, from all different developments. And this is why was created as leaders, how we can learn and help and synergize and collectively grow, because humanity needs to stay and flourish. And that is the purpose to go with it. So thank you very much for all of you dedicating your time, your support to this, because being present never has been more, in my mind, more relative, because of what we just went through, because it's not ever going to be done, because whether it's this or the next thing, we are now reevaluating our lives. And the statistic that just came out to close out, I don't have the verification on it, so don't quote me on this, but someone reported on one of my great tech news around the world on Clubhouse, said 95% of all the jobs right now, people are looking to leave because they don't like what they have, and that their job employer isn't satisfactory. Only 15% are happy with their current boss. And the fact is that they lost the digitalization. Oh, I looked good on Zoom. Oh, we talked in, everything was going on. And they're losing that relativity. So I love Tasha's thing of sharing that photograph. It just hit me so much that they could go with it.
Let me just add one more thing. You know, I actually posted this morning, and it's just because it just hit such a nerve with me. It takes 6 to 8 pallbearers to lift you up when you are deceased. Imagine what you could accomplish if you had 6 to 8 people lifting you up while you are alive. TJ Betts Sr. said it, and I can't emphasize enough that opportunity for us to be present and to really be able to connect and to bring the most out of everybody else when we're with them. It couldn't be more important than now. And I agree with you, 85% of people are dissatisfied with their job, and yet people are in denial about it. They're not even realizing it. You know, even with all the stuff that we have to do with Zoom and all the COVID things, it's okay to pick up the phone and just say, I'm just checking on you. right? It's okay to just have that one-on-one. Never has the phone call been more intimate than now compared to what it was before because of all of this craziness. But, you know, I hear people calling Facebook fake book, right? And that people can airbrush themselves and all of a sudden everybody looks perfect to everyone. I'm on a Zoom call and there's people that are 20 and 30 and 40 years younger than me that are on and they have a filter.
Yeah.
And you're just thinking to yourself, how there's just that standard just keeps getting higher and higher and higher and higher. And we really need to just bring out our humanness to everybody. It's probably the best gift we could probably give to everyone else. Being present. So sometime today, please, whether it's somebody watching or one of you, stop and capture a moment. Just literally photograph it into your mind and into your memory, capture a moment. And if you're not doing something that's worthwhile enough every single day to be able to capture that moment, there's something that needs to change.
We're seeing Erica's moment right now.
Look at her.
I know. I wanted to share the moment.
Oh, that's awesome.
Beautiful. I love it.
Oh,
And
that's
one of
gorgeous.
how many polls, Erica?
Oh, it's just, it's the one pool.
Okay.
We're being present, ladies. We're being present.
You know, and
Beautiful.
that's what Erica, you know, your story that you're talking, if you want to like to finish it, but that is one of the greatest things that I truly admire about you. You are so present, everything you do, whether it's in the Army, serving, you know, going and capturing the military behind enemy lines, when you're flying the helicopters, whether you're on a call, whether you're doing things, you are so in the moment and you're so focused, so driven, and you move from move to move to move. The intensity of what you do is unbelievable. And that is one of the things that is so powerful with this, you know, the ability to transition versus in being, like someone made a comment of being half here, half there, and trying to get it all done and never continuing that list. So your girl, that,
I think that's great.
well, I'd like to say be present. One thing I'd like to everyone know, this is the NDILC principle. Sharing your time is one of the most valuable gifts you can give. Do it with intention, be truly being present. And if you heard from all of us, you know, the ability to do that in so many different sectors is so incredible. So Tami, you want to take it home with a question for everyone so we can close it out?
Well, I think that the most important thing is, what would be that one piece of advice that you would give to somebody to get them to be present? Does anyone want to respond?
I'll try. You know, I always remember hearing, as I grew up in a very male dominated industry, I always remember hearing, you know, it's just business. It's not personal. And I used to always say, no, it's always personal. It's always personal. And if you think that all the time, it creates that desire to be present. And it helps force you to remember it. No, it's always personal. So take the time and be present with that person. So that's my answer to that.
A practical tip would be to deep breathing. If you find yourself fading away into what could be going on somewhere else, or what is my next hour going to be, you know, I take a few breaths that brings it to me now at this moment, and then you realize where you are, and then you focus. That is known to work.
I would also share, I think I told the story on a previous broadcast, but I would say that being empathetic and nurturing, those aren't female characteristics. I know that that's an old school thought. Those are leadership characteristics. And there's a reason for it. It creates a lot of intimacy with you and your coworkers and employees. So don't be afraid to be female. That's a leadership characteristic.
Empathy is a strength.
Yeah,
And I
nice.
think that's the most important thing for everybody to remember. Empathy is a strength. And, you know, people think that if you're too kind, well, you know, we can be tough but fair. If I have to tell somebody I care enough about you to have this conversation, because you have to let somebody go, but you can be human about it. And you can be human about wanting to see people improve. You don't have to just stay that it's, you know, all wine and roses, that it's all happy all the time. There are times when you have to adjust somebody to go into the right lane, or maybe there's something going on in their life, or maybe they need to actually be in a different job. But you can handle it really well and say, you know, I witnessed it during the pandemic. I was blown away by how many people were laid off or let go or downsized via Zoom without even looking at anyone's face, or a broadcast email instead of being face to face like this. I care enough about you for us to have this conversation. And how can I help you go further from it? It's a choice every single day, but I absolutely believe that empathy is a strength, and you have to be present to be empathetic.
I say be present in all aspects, mentally, physically, and everything of your human nature to actually absorb that person in that moment. Because if we're being present just looking at a square and we're not present about everything around us, temperature, light, everything that goes with it, other just hearing physical aspects of it, then we are so much better.
And I love this quote that I found. I thought it was really insightful. So yesterday is a canceled check. Tomorrow is a promissory note. Today is the only cash you have, so spend it wisely.
Beautiful.
So that's my advice.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, thank you, everybody. I think this is.
Erica's got one. Sorry, Erica's.
Go ahead, please.
I would just say keep things in perspective. I mean, we are little tiny specks on a little tiny planet and a big giant universe. So it's so easy to get wrapped up in, you know, your daily problems or sucked up into someone else's problems. But really just pay attention to the fact that life on this planet, this small, fragile planet, is short. And to live your life with that context that every day is a gift, every day is a present. So enjoy it. You know, we might think we have 20 years ahead of us, but we may only have a week. So live, you know, just live your life and try to be grateful. And if you're in a down, bad place, recognize that it's okay to be in that place for a second, but be resilient, get out of it, and, you know, reflect and again, be present in those moments, but keep things in perspective. I'm sure that you can get yourself out of, you know, problems and live your life and enjoy it and be able to help others get through their issues.
I love it. Well, thank you, everybody, for being present today. This honestly was a gift.
Hey, that was excellent. Thank you very much, Tami, for hosting. As the CEO of Exit, really phenomenal always, and congrats to all your stellar accomplishments. So next month is going to be Prepare for the Future, and that's going to be hosted by Dr. Chitra Dorai. I am so excited. Women with advanced skills today will be ready for tomorrow's challenges, and that could never be more present than what's going on with the fourth industrial revolution. But remember, this is a monthly theme. So every time you see someone that's being present, like we just heard from Teresa about the $100 bill, could have been $100 richer to see that person. So please make sure that you post the NDILC principle, #8, be present on any time you see something on a daily thing. It's for the entire month of July. And everyone, please have a great July 4th weekend. Be safe, stay healthy. And thank you very much for joining us. And thank you all.
Happy
you.
July
Bye, everybody.
4th of July.
4th of July.